Hello friends, welcome to Science with me. My name is Dr. Erica with Rosie Research, and we are building some amazing breadboard circuit tutorials. If you'd like to join us, you can support us at patreon.com/rosieresearch and make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now today we have done a little bit about wiring up a breadboard. This is sort of the second tutorial in our series, so we kind of should know how these breadboards are connected, and that is that these columns going vertically here, these 5 rows or these 5 dots are connected, and the rows are not connected to each other. So it's a great way to sort of pretend to solder things together and make great circuit connections, but not actually have to bring out the soldering iron. And of course, this part right here is a big gap. So this column, the top part of this column, is not connected to the bottom part of the column. So these are independent. It's just these 5 rows that are connected. And here are our power rails that go all the way across the top. And that gives, usually we plug in our battery and we can connect the top to the bottom if we'd like. And your breadboard for the minus, it might have it as black, and that's totally fine. So today we are going to build a fading LED as we learn about a circuit component called the capacitor. Now this capacitor, I have 3 different types here, and they act as little teeny tiny batteries that they can store up charge. So a battery can get hooked up to them, they can charge these up, and you could actually take the battery out of the circuit and it could continue to light the LED, but that LED will fade out. And the amount of time it takes to fade out depends on how big your capacitor is, how much charge were you able to carry, and the size of your resistor that you're gonna discharge it through as well. And that's sort of like how quickly does it allow to go through. So I've got some different capacitors of different sizes and types here to show you. I have an LED, a couple different resistors, and then these are just my jumper cables to work on connecting pieces to the breadboard. Now your jumper cables might all look like these ones where they're big, and that's okay. Sometimes it can get a little confusing about where everything is going, but I think for videoing and showing you guys, it's going to be a lot easier for you to see with these. But a wire is a wire, and when you connect it into the breadboard, it doesn't matter if it looks like this or if it looks like this. It doesn't matter if it's red or green or orange. All those things don't matter as you're making your circuits. All right, so before we start, you do want to double check that your LED works. So the LED is a one-way street. You have a long leg and a short leg. The long leg should go on top of your battery, and you should, if you're using a coin cell battery, be able to just double check that the LED is good and the battery is good. Note that if you flip it upside down, the LED doesn't light up. So do make sure that you have it going the right direction. And often in circuits, that's one thing that we can do, is we can flip over the battery. If the circuit's not working with LEDs, you can flip the battery and see if everything was maybe connected backwards by a little bit. But that's the only thing we want to test, and then we are ready to get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to add in some battery wires. So I'm just going to take my 2 jumpers. The red one is going to go into the positive, just like that. And the black one is going to go up into the negative, which is blue here. And you just want to push it in. It should go in a decent amount, so it won't go in just a little bit. These jumper cables are actually specifically made, you can see that they go in about 1 centimeter down. And it should go all the way in. You'll notice there's not much wire hanging out there. All right, we will hook up our actual battery, which is our coin cell, later. And when we do that, we will put the red piece on top and the black piece on the bottom. And that is how we will hook up this battery. You might have a battery pack for the 2032, and if you do, you can certainly be using that. All right, so now let's add our button in. And the buttons have been made specifically to go over this part here, and that sort of allows you to connect the top and the bottom if you want, or you can connect the right and the left. So we'll just plop this in. You do need to make sure there's 4 little legs on this. So you do want to make sure that you get each of the legs into their own hole, and you sort of start pressing a little gently and then go all the way in. All right, sometimes the legs can sort of bend under, and that's not as helpful. All right, so we have our button, but our button is not connected to anything right now. So now we can connect it to the hot rail, and on our video it's red, here it's going to be orange, and I'm going to connect this pin, which is coming into 4 right here, into the voltage, just like that. All right, and then we can add in our capacitor. So I'm going to start with just this little teeny tiny capacitor. at first. And these ones, these two capacitors, do not have a direction, so they are not polarized. Doesn't matter which way you plug them in. This capacitor, it is polarized, and the way that you know is on one side, you've got this white and it's got a negative sign, so this is the one that goes negative. Handily, it also has a long leg and a short leg, and just like the LED, the long leg goes to the positive and the short leg goes to the negative, so that's something to think about. But let's put in our capacitor right here. So you just can plug it in and make sure that it's not plugging in so that both of the legs are in the same column, because those would be connected to each other and that would take the capacitor out of your circuit. All right, so we're going to plug it in so they are in two different columns, the legs. And then we can also add in our LED. And we want to make sure that we add in our LED. We know where our leg is. I'm going to put my positive leg towards the left. I can just plug it in just like that. All right, so now we are going to connect our capacitor to our battery, and you'll notice it comes out the other side of the battery. So there was one terminal of the battery, and that one terminal was connected into our power, and the other terminal of the battery is over here. That is what we are going to connect into our capacitor. So we can connect this like this, just like that. So mine looks a little bit different than what's in the video. Oops, I didn't get quite, and you notice that my wire bent right there. That's because I was trying to make it a little bit shorter. In fact, I'm going to bring out a different one that is much shorter, and I think that will help me. So I'm going to bring out this little teeny tiny guy like this. Now this one's not touching, so what I can do is I can just move my capacitor over. So now I have it, it goes out of the battery and into my capacitor. All right, so these guys, this one shares one column with the switch, sorry, not the battery, the switch. One column with the switch and one column with one leg of my capacitor. All right, so now we're gonna put our capacitor also to ground. So if we put in this polarized capacitor, we do wanna make sure that that negative leg goes into ground, which would be the one in column 10. All right, so now I've got into the capacitor that will power and charge up the capacitor, and the capacitor into ground right there. So now we're going to go through a resistor into our LED. We're going to start with our smaller resistor, and this gets connected in to the same side of the capacitor that is connected to our button. So it'll go in for us into column 8, and I can plug this in just like that. And you'll notice that it doesn't quite reach. I can just pick up my LED and move it over. All right, so the resistor is going now out from this. We have the switch, which goes into the capacitor and the resistor, and then the resistor is going into the long leg of my LED. And then we are going to need to, oh, we already moved our LED to rearrange. That was helpful. And now we're going to put our LED into ground. So I'm going to use another gray one. And the short leg of my LED is in pin 13. And that will go right up into the ground. Just like that. And you can always double check your circuits as you are going. All right. So now we are ready to plop in our battery and check to see if it's working. So I'm going to put the red jumper cable to the top of my battery, and I can just pinch the black onto the bottom, and I can hold those two like this, and it will power it up. And we notice that my LED does go on and off, which is great. We don't see a very slow fade, but we can try a couple of different things to change that. So one of the things is we can change this capacitor. And so we could look at what is a different capacitance do. And you do just need to make sure you plug your capacitors in to the same part. So this one, I'd say it fades even more slowly. We could do this one, which is a much larger capacitor. And here I've got the negative, and that's gonna go into ground.
I'm going to make sure that that guy goes into ground just like that. And now you can really, oh, you guys can't see it. We'll push this over there. There we go. You can really see how it fades out. And that fading out is from this capacitor charging the battery, charging up from the battery, and then the battery is actually out of this circuit. Once I charge up this capacitor, I can take that battery out and it will slowly fade out. It will go off just the capacitor. All right, so it doesn't turn off immediately if I take this battery out, which is really cool. And the other thing that we can change to change how quickly or slowly this guy goes out is the resistor. And we could put in a larger resistor and we could see what that does for our fading right here. And now it's going a little bit even more slowly because we increased our resistance. Now, if you really wanted to know, you would actually take the capacitance and multiply it by the resistance, and that gives you what's called a time constant, which sort of gives you an idea of the amount of time it's going to take to fade out to a certain point, which is cool. I hope that you guys enjoyed making this fading LED with me. It's been a lot of fun. Make sure you check out our other breadboard circuit tutorials and our Tinkercad circuit tutorials if you don't have all the supplies but still want to work on circuits. We will see you next time, and have a great day.